Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. Now in this stream I'd like to talk about how the globalist cabal is absolutely fixated with having no alternative or opposition power centres to their own power. Now white people who expect to vote, they expect their vote to count. They expect the rule of law to apply. They expect due legal process. They expect accountable government. Because of this expectation, because the white people have a long tradition of having this power and of having this capacity to hold governments and institutions accountable, because of that power and that expectation of having a seat at the table, the globalists have decided that white people are now the enemy. White supremacists, they're the enemy, and they must be crushed. They must have their legal rights taken away. They must be vilified day in, day out with all forms of propaganda across the media, and they had to be treated as so low that they're not even the shit on the shoes of the globalists. That's how low white people are now. And this is all because white people are expecting and expect and have had for hundreds of years a seat at the table in one form or another, and of course the ballot box and impartial rule of law and so on are key amongst those, along with the institutions. So this is the big change we're seeing now, the big change, and have for some years. This is what the globalists think. We're not going to share power. If you guys expect you're going to have any seat at the table or any influence or any input here, you're not, and we will crush you if you think that. Now, they thought they could get away with just sort of slowly chipping away at the whole thing of the expectation of rights and white people having a say in things. They thought they could sort of hoodwink us and just gradually remove it. But when they realised through Brexit and the election of Trump that there's a whole lot of white people out there who don't like what's going on, they don't like the globalist program, they don't like what the globalist cabal is doing. As soon as they realised that, and they were quite clear where it was going, particularly the last presidential election, when they realised, hey, we've got to rig the vote even if we're going to stop these people from having a seat at the table. And that's what it's all about. We're not going to share power with you. We will crush you. That's the whole story in a nutshell. And so this is what's going on now, and this is what they're doing. And we can see it with that idiot General Milley in front of the Congress, the biggest threat's white supremacy and all this sort of thing. And it's absurd. And the propaganda lengths they go to invent this white supremacy and this so-called white racism, it's utterly insane, and shows how out of control the whole thing is, and also how desperate they are and how frightened they are. The globalists know that they're illegitimate, completely illegitimate. They know that the white population does not support them, and so they have to resort to these crazy methods to keep control and to keep pursuing their globalist agenda. So let's just go back a little bit in time here. Now, English-speaking people, courtesy of the British, have always had more civil and legal rights than pretty much any other people on the globe, and this was something that was evident even with the British colonists in America at the time of the American Revolution, and they were mostly, not all, but mostly British, and a lot of had come from Britain in their lifetimes. They enjoyed more liberties than pretty much any other population on the globe. Now, there was the American Revolution was in effect a civil war, really, and it was about taxation and representation, and you can see how that war took place. Each side lurched one more step forward, thinking the other guy would back down, and nobody did. And in the end, it sort of ended up in a conflict, and they'd sort of walked into it without really, neither side really wanted a conflict. And if you particularly look at the instructions and orders given to the British General Gage at the time, he was the general in charge of the army, and also was the head negotiator to organise a peace. I don't know if you can imagine a contradiction in a job description, then there it is. But there was these rights have been around for a long time, certainly for the English-speaking world, and and those concept of rights spread around to other places in the planet. So representative democracy, representative government, and rule of law, due legal process, all these sorts of things are pretty much uniquely Western, and something that have made the lives of people living in the West far more fulfilling and holding far more promise than you'd see in, again, many other places in the globe. And to have this much agreed power sharing, changing government, elections, independent courts, this is not a widespread thing. It's fairly rare and pretty much unique to Western society, certainly in its continuity. There was a big change, I guess, in the 1880s, particularly in England, where, or ushered in rather by the First World War, and certainly the Second World War, the mass mobilisation of all the nation's resources, mass drafting into the army, mass mobilisation of the workforce, and central control through the government. These were new things. No other war prior to World War I had required that degree of mass mobilisation. In fact, no war had required mass mobilisation on those lines. You've got to go back in history quite a long time to see those sort of levels of mobilisation. The mobilisation of Prussia, say, in the 7 Years' War around 1760, the mobilisation of the Roman society war machine during the Second War with the Carthaginians, particularly as Hannibal was rampaging length and breadth of Italy and duffing up one Roman army after another. There's very rare that level of mobilisation takes place. And what happened was that with everybody was making a sacrifice to protect the state, and in reward or in return, the state extended the vote to everybody. If you're laying your life on the line as a soldier, or you're letting your son go off to war to get killed, and all these sorts of things, these were the reasons are put forward that everyone should have the right to vote. And so the franchise was extended from, on or about 70% of the 65-70% of the total population. It was extended to universal franchise, and was later extended again to 18-year-olds, given that 18-year-olds were being called up in the draft for wars like, for example, Vietnam and so on. So this is how the structure changed. It's something that the elites have resented ever since then. They believe the vote was extended to people who did not deserve the vote, should never have got the vote, and they're just the serfs and the riffraff of society that can be cast aside when they're no longer useful or convenient for the ends that the globalists have in mind. So the whole issue is to do with power sharing, as I've already said, and this is where it's going. Now, as long as whites expect, and quite reasonably expect, there's hundreds of years of tradition in this, as long as whites expect a seat at the power table and that they expect their vote to count and courts to be independent, politicians to be accountable, as long as whites expect that in any sort of numbers, then the globalists will move to crush and disparage and have this ridiculous propaganda, but also to replace whites in Western countries with other voters from third world shitholes and so on. So now these people have come from much poorer countries where things like civil war and are going on. To them, coming to the West is a huge step up. No matter how, if they have a job as a toilet cleaner in some asshole places, they're still going to think that they're much better off than they were in the country they came from. It's the Western white people who are losing out, and for whom globalization has no attraction. It offers nothing except a lower standard of living and a very uncertain future. So that's the general sort of architecture of what's going on. I just wanted to get that out there, that the reason white people are being so aggressively crushed and marginalised and on the butt of so much hysterical propaganda is because the globalists do not want to share power anymore, and that's what it's all about. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.